Hey everybody, the following is an excerpt from a Rahdo Rounds-Up video, and if you'd like to see the rest of the roundup that this came from, you can hit that eye up in the top right corner screen or follow the show notes, or if you'd like to know more about the game, there's a link for it down in the show notes as well. Okay, let's get to it. Doodle Dungeon, which is a very charming little roll and write. Although it's not a roll and write, it's another flip and write. There's cards we're drafting, and when we grab these cards every round, there's two elements to them. They show the elements. One half of the card shows here's everything you can add to your dungeon because we're trying to build the best. We're trying to doodle the best dungeon possible, and at the beginning of the game, our dungeon is just an empty grid, completely empty, but we want to put walls, we want to put monsters, and then amongst some of those monsters, we want to hide our treasures that we don't want adventurers to get. And so, the drafting, trying to get the right resources to build the most ideally created death trap of a dungeon for the adventurers who will eventually come, is half of what you're drafting for. The other half of what you're drafting for when you grab these cards is each card has a special power that you will use in the second half of the game. Because once everybody has gotten all the cards, and everybody's dungeon is made. And it's interesting, the game actually comes with stencils to help you draw cool little monsters if you don't really feel like, if you're not comfortable with the artistic creativity. I guess you could just write G for goblin as well. But it was just fun using the stencils to make the walls and all that. But totally as a side, after everybody's done making their dungeon, then you hand your dungeon tile or paper to your neighbor. They hand one to you, and then you are going to plot a path through the dungeon for an adventurer trying to find the hidden treasure that some monsters out there have. There's some rules that make it very, very tricky, and the interesting thing is the cards you saved, they can now be used to either help the adventurer get through the bad times or stop the adventurer from getting through, or stop the adventurer from making it to the end. I play them to defend my own dungeon or to help raid the dungeon that a neighbor has handed to me. And then after we found the best path using our powers, we hand them back and we score points to see who built the best dungeon, who got rated the least, and it's really clever. And I'll be honest, it is just a lot of fun. You take kind of a nice sense of pride after you're done, just looking at your dungeon. You see the path that the adventurer followed through. You see, oh, that's where he died because I made the best dungeon possible, and nothing was getting through. Nothing grabbed my hidden treasures that I hid right in plain sight because you thought it was that dragon over they put in the corner. No, it was this goblin you walked right past, and you didn't think it was worth your time. That's where I put the treasure. Ha 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 ha. There's a lot of cool stuff. Why did it come in so low? Especially because my wife loved it. She thought it was a blast. Honestly, I'm not quite sure what it was. This game literally had me melting down because the first half of the game, which is arguably the most fun, the creation element, you can come up with some very, very clever, windy, twisty paths with walls and all of that as you're drafting. But I just really struggled to come up with idealized layouts. And it became very frustrating for me. It's not the game's fault at all. Because my wife, we're actually looking at a picture of one of the dungeons she made before I plundered it. She was able to make these perfectly designed traps. And meanwhile, I was like, I'm getting this access to the same cards as you, but my dungeons are garbage. And I suspect if I went back to it, and there's just some kind of weird learning curve. Just something about my brain had a hard time coming to terms with this blank canvas and just drafting stuff. And I wanted to draft stuff for the powers later, but I had to get the stuff right now. And I just was very frustrated by it. Not the game's fault at all, because I can confirm my wife really excelled. I just had some kind of weird hang-up that prevented me from enjoying it as much as I otherwise might. I can definitely identify that it's a very clever game. And again, the art component of this game with the stencils is so much fun. But I just had some kind of weird mental block. It's not you, Doodle Dungeon, it's me. And that's why Doodle Dungeon, a very sharp game. And I think most people are really going to enjoy it, but for me, it came in at number 9 of the month. Okay,